next to each other that Goldberg is several inches taller.
Humorous to the middle. Turnbuckle. Going up on the top. Here's his moonsault. Oh, he connected. 1, 2, and he kicked out.
Goldberg kicked out.
He kicked out.
That's a shocker.
Yeah, Hugh Morris looks shocked.
You're not kidding, he does. Humorous, with a stunned look on his face. He kicked out in no laughing matter. A back elbow puts him down again. How about that backflip? And a big power slam.
And that's a lot to lift, over 300 pounds of Hugh Morris.
And he did it with ease. That time he's going to pick him up again. Scoop play, pull him down.
Hey, a pretty agile for a big Goldberg.
To the attack again. Maybe a vertical suplex here. Got him up. Oh, yeah, it is. Muscles him up. Combination slam. 1, 2, 3. And Bill Goldberg, out of obscurity, comes to Nitro and pulls a major upset.
And Hugh Morris is not laughing. He got one shot in.
How about that? Not only did he pin him, he kicked out of no laughing matter.
You know, I think Hugh Morris got shocked. He gave him his best shot, and Bill Goldberg kicked out of it.
What a debut for Bill Goldberg.
It is absolutely deafening in here tonight, the chant of Goldberg. Goldberg, the man to my immediate left. When we left the air last Monday night, you were in a rather precarious position at the hands of a gentleman known as the Giant. Goldberg.
Saturday, Road Wild, payback time. I've thrown my hat in the ring for the NWO's little battle royal for one reason, and one reason only: the Giant.
Oh.
And I don't care who I have to destroy to get to him. Whether it be Hall, whether it be Nash, whether it be the disciple, Bryan Adams, I don't care. Or whether it be the franchise they call Sting. Because I got one thing to say, Giant. And you know what it is? You're next.
The third shot, putting down to a knee again.
Goldberg knows right now what he's in there with, what he's heard about his whole life, how tough this man Hogan can be, what this man's capable of doing, and he knows right now, firsthand, what Hogan's all about.
Comes a time in every great athlete's career where you got to dig down deep, where you got to suck it up, where you got to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you belong here. For Goldberg, the time is right now, because the champ is leveling with everything.
Hogan with those patented leg drops is delivered to, and here comes Kurt Hennig to ringside.
And we've got company.
There's Malone and DDP following Hennig.
He kicked out from the Hogan leg drop. That has Hollywood stunned.
Yes, Malone can use the diamond cutter. And look at Goldberg, he's ready.
He's poised.
Okay, there's part one. Now finish him off. Finish him off.
He's calling for it.
This is it. This is it. Your career's on the line here. Do it. Do it. His place will erupt when he picks him up.
He's got him up. Oh, hell yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Goldberg has the opportunity now to switch about him, and Lesnar, I think Lesnar struck that ring post to the shoulder. Oh, the spear! The spear! The spear by Goldberg, almost breaking Lesnar in half. The spear followed by the jackhammer as the rattlesnake raises Goldberg's hand.
There was no mistake about that 3 count, emphatically.
Has multiple one-on-one pay-per-view victories over Brock Lesnar. That's John Cena. Goldberg looks to do it tonight. And Brock Lesnar looking to establish dominant beast who is planted by Goldberg. Fear from Goldberg. Spear! Goldberg again with a spear! 2 spears to Lesnar! Here, Lesnar trying to catch his breath, trying to make it to his feet. Goldberg again. He's got Lesnar center of the ring. Goldberg's looking for a... Look at the jackhammer! A jackhammer to Lesnar! Here's the cover! Oh my God! Over 12 years, Goldberg returns to the ring and absolutely destroys the beast! And that one last jackhammer was good enough to pin Brock Lesnar. The entire world has got to be in shock. This is how the match starts.
Highlights of one Bill Goldberg's career, and he's back in the news, or at least in the wrestling news anyway. It is America's #1 bi-coastal podcast featuring 2 annoying Jews located, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. Nothing worthwhile in the West Coast, in the great city of Phoenix, Arizona. It is myself, Evan Moody, and on the East Coast, representing the great city of Coral Springs, it is my friend Andrew Gruthius. Groo, how the hell are you?
Shalom. Good Shabbos.
Is that for the topic?
Hell, it's you said we're 2 annoying Jews, and we're going to talk about a 3rd annoying Jew today.
Well, actually, let's scale back and talk about a 4th annoying Jew. Before we get to Bill Goldberg, let's scale back and talk about our last podcast. It was the king of all media, Howard Stern. The Serious Years, Jew. Part 2. We took a look at Artie Lang's departure from the Stern Show and his post-Howard career, Howard's lawsuit against SiriusXM over subscription number targets, his stint as America's judge on AGT, the evil or not so evil Marcy Turk, and the Evolut Quiver's not so private battle against cancer, Howard's rise as one of the best long-form interviewers, his book, Howard Stern Comes Again, and the famous or infamous Hillary Clinton interview. He's making new fans or pissing off old hardcore fans. Final thoughts on Howard Stern, The Serious Years, Part 2.
It was a downer of an episode, I thought. It was good. I mean, I think it was good, but afterwards,
I kind of agree with you.
And listening to it, back, I walked away from it like, man, we're just picking all the downer stuff. I mean, we got to talk about something we love. Well, we do. We do, but I guess we're trying to save the world is what we're trying to do.
It's a really weird time when you're a hardcore Stern fan. Like, I put on the channels, especially with the live show, and I'm hoping for something. And you like this week, the high pitch Eric stuff was amazing. I had belly laughs. I felt like 95 again in my car as I drive to work. But but then I get disappointed at some of the other stuff. I guess. Got to come to terms with it. And I think actually your point was great. Will there be a Howard Stern, The Serious Years, or something Part 3? I think that's the interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out what his contract runs up in December.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I would assume he would announce something before. But yeah, I hope there is. There'll definitely be a Howard Stern something Part 3. I don't think he's going gently into that good night. I think, he's not that type of guy. He needs to be communicating with his audience somehow. So,
okay.
There will definitely be, the discussion will continue. That's right.
Yeah, he's definitely he won't wait till December. He'll start tantalizing us maybe over the summer, and probably expect a major announcement from the King of All Media fairly soon.
I hope so, sooner rather than later.
All right, well, let's move on to today's topic at hand. One of the most polarizing names in sports entertainment, Bill Goldberg. So, Groo, when I say the name Bill Goldberg, what just comes into your mind?
What comes into my mind immediately is Saturday morning services back at Temple Beth Torah on Long Island, when the rabbi would announce all the people who contributed, Marcy Kupferberg, Stanley Rubenstein, and of course William Goldberg. That's what comes in. You want to ask what comes in. Now, if you said the word Goldberg, that's a completely different thing. But yeah,
was William Goldberg a major financial contributor to your temple?
I'm sure a William Goldberg has contributed financially to every temple in this country at some point. But with what you mean, Bill Goldberg, probably.
I just wanted to, Goldberg, right off the top of your head.
Like, superstar, could have done more, but probably didn't have the desire to do more than he did. He's a Lesnar type in that he has never really fully embraced the business. He sees it as a business. Like, there's not a lot of passion for it from him, and that's perfectly fine.
Well, all right, we'll get to this a little bit later, but we'll just touch on this real quick. You don't feel that 2000, which was a pretty great run in 2016, maybe changed a lot of wrestling fans' minds about Goldberg?
Maybe, but it might have been a little too late.
Did it change your mind about him in 2016?
No, I've always liked him. And anytime, and no matter how you slice it, he is still appointment television. If he's going to be on, people are going to watch. Ratings are going to go up.
That is true. So let's just get, before we get to the past, let's get to the present. Breaking news: Goldberg wrestled the Fiend Bray Wyatt at the Saudi Super Showdown for the Universal title, and 3 minutes later, 4 spears and a sort of jackhammer later, at the age of 53 years old, Bill Goldberg is your new WWE Universal Champion. How do you feel about that?
I actually, for some stupid reason, I like it. I was surprised by it, and maybe that's why I like it. Anytime that, it's funny, WWE fans are priceless. You can throw a curveball at them, surprise the hell out of them, and if it's not exactly what they wanted, they hate it. And then if it's exactly what they wanted, they're like, well, it's so predictable. I like it because now I really don't know where they're going, and that's a good thing.
Well, I'll tell you where they're going in a second, but you mentioned the fans. Were you surprised at some of the fan backlash on social media?
No.
I mean, some of it was pretty intense.
Yeah, it's par for the course. They're never happy, and we're among that group, I would say. If we didn't like it, we would voice our opinion. That's what the social media thing is for. But I was not surprised because, obviously I know what you're going to bring up probably Roman Reigns, I'm sure. And, of course, everyone's saying is like, oh, here we go, another way to slot in Roman Reigns. But you know what?
Well,
no, the answer to your question is no, I was not surprised at all.
Okay, so SmackDown last night sets up 2 major bouts at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. I didn't see it, but I did read it. Goldberg comes out at SmackDown, says, who's next? Roman Reigns comes out, I'm next. So now we have Goldberg versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. We also have the return of John Cena. Cena comes out, cuts a promo. The Fiend Bray Wyatt is up on the stage, points to the WrestleMania sign. Cena nods his cap as he's indicating yes. So now we have Goldberg versus Reigns for the Universal title at Mania, and then we have the attraction match, Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, going up against Cena. I'm okay with that. Well, let me hear your thoughts first, and I'll give you my thoughts. Thoughts on these matches heading into WrestleMania 36?
My only issue as marquee matches, I would
Whatever
say
you want to call it, they're matches. They're in there.
they are marquee matches, and I'm looking forward to seeing them, especially live as we will be. But at the same time, there's not much behind them. They seem to be just like, oh, let's do this, and they did it instead of building up. Like, remember the old days? Like, two guys would like bump into each other in the hallway. Then they'd have words, and then next week there'd be a match. Like, set it up a little bit. This is just like, okay.
Well, we have plenty of time. I mean, there's
that's true.
But how many weeks till WrestleMania?
Right, that's true. But they already announced the match, so now they're going backwards as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they could. Well, here's my thoughts. I like the matches, except I think, and this is, I do think it's not a mistake, but I think if the belt would have been on The Fiend with Cena, I would have liked that a little bit better. It's just that if there's any criticism, and I don't mind, I want to see Bill Goldberg at WrestleMania.
Me too.
I just don't know if at 53 years old as your champ, it looks like they're setting him up for, the big loss against Roman Reigns to move Roman forward, which is fine. I just feel you took a year. You literally took a year to build up Bray Wyatt. Amazing vignettes, amazing psychology. And we did talk about a little bit of sputter, but for the most part, fans really seem to enjoy the character and bought into him. Still a good, strong response. And I think the match against Cena will be fine. And I think Cena will get served up. I don't think Cena minds. I think Bray and he'll get the shine. But maybe for the belt, I would have liked to have seen that. And then your talk about build-up, see, that's where I think they could have done a little bit better with Bray Wyatt and Cena. Maybe have a Firefly Funhouse segment where Bray sets up the psychology as why he's choosing Cena for this match. Maybe he's the Golden Boy hero and, sort of Bray as the anti Mr. Rogers, something to that effect.
Yeah, he should have guests on that thing. I don't know why he doesn't.
Well, maybe that's the new evolution. I'm sure they're not going to keep it this way forever, but maybe that's the next evolution, sort of a live Firefly Funhouse. Yeah. But then you can't do the production values, I think, live as you would.
No, you tape those. But either way, I think they should evolve that thing because it's
all right. Well, all right. So I think we both like what they're putting up on the SmackDown.
But
side.
I do agree with you. I do agree with you. And part of the online response was like, a 53-year-old, not even part-timer is carrying your carrying your title into WrestleMania. I can see people having issue with that, but hey, business is business.
And I think that your point about appointment television, from what I've read, Goldberg is on. I don't know when they say the ratings pop, but it's just he garners a lot more, interest than the typical guys that they're throwing out there. I mean, he is a legend. He's a Hall of Famer, and clearly there is some audience that wants to see him. I don't know about Champ, but clearly, from what I've read, the numbers, at least, the ratings seem to do a lot better when a guy like Goldberg is on the TV, and probably even a John Cena.
Yeah, but why would they do it on SmackDown on a Friday night when his people can't watch TV? I wasn't watching last night. I was davening.
That's right. And so here's a good transition. Let's talk about early Bill Goldberg. He was born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He did have a bar mitzvah, by the way, at Temple, Israel.
He's allowed to do that? They're allowed to have bar mitzvahs in Oklahoma?
Yes.
Wow.
You're kind of a social studies guy. You should know that, right?
I don't teach Jewish history.
They don't lock them up in internment camps, do they?
Ooh, you said that. I didn't say that.
Yaka. Goldberg goes to school. He's a varsity football player. He's a bouncer. He's a big guy. His mother is a classical violinist. His father, who attended Harvard University, was an obstetrician and a gynecologist. Parents later divorced, and his father, Jed, died in late 2006. As we joked around, Goldberg is very proud of his Jewish heritage, and he does not hide it from the wrestling world, including my research that he refused to wrestle on Yom Kippur.
Now he's Sandy Koufax.
Yeah, well...
with a tattoo, so he can't be buried in the Jewish cemetery.
As two Jews, Do you fast on Yom Kippur? And after your fast is done, just how much lox do you shovel into that gullet, that salted fish? How much can you put down after a day of fasting?
Can't you tell I fast every day?
Well, I'm hearing you're on a workout plan. This could be fodder for a future podcast. I think you're trying to slim up for WrestleMania season.
No, I'm trying to be able to jog with you and Craig when we go in November.
That would be awesome. That would be revolutionary.
I feel very left out when you guys do that.
Goldberg earns a scholarship to play football for the University of Georgia.
This guy's a loser, man. Listen to that. Like all of the Harvard. What? Come on.
Played defensive tackle. He was taken by the Los Angeles Rams in the 11th round in the 1990 NFL Draft. He played for the Los Angeles Rams in the 1990 season. Was cut, followed by a stint in the Canadian Football League, the Sacramento Gold Miners. Came back to the Falcons and played for the Falcons from 92 to 94. Was cut from the Falcons in 95. He was selected by the new expansion team for the NFL, the Carolina Panthers, in the 95 NFL expansion draft. Tore his lower abdomen off his pelvis. Got cut from the Panthers, never played for them. And decided he was done with his NFL dream. And like most ex-NFL football players, Goldberg looked to the possibility for professional wrestling to make a living. And during his rehab from his NFL injuries, began lifting, powerlifting, MMA, was spotted by Lex Luger and Sting in a gym who urged him to try professional wrestling. So he begins a stint at the aforementioned WCW Power Plant. Now, Groo, you may remember the WCW Power Plant was the professional wrestling school for World Championship Wrestling, located in Atlanta, Georgia. Was owned and operated by WCW, and it held tryouts, stopped tryouts in December of '99 and closed officially in March 2001 when WCW assets were sold to the World Wrestling Federation. Power Plant was managed in '95 by Paul Orndorff. You may remember some of the advertisements on the Power Plant on Monday, WCW Monday Nitro. Applicants could join as early as the age of 18, and the cutoff age was 29. If your tryout was impressive, that would earn you an invitation to join the school at a cost of $3,000 for 6-month training. Let's see. You may remember that the head trainer for the Power Plant, I don't know if you're a WCW Nitro guy, but Dwayne Bruce, a.k.a. Sarge, little guy with a stubby cigar.
I remember that guy, yeah.
He would take part in occasional vignettes and minor storylines on Monday Nitro. Maybe not much to say, but Groo, any remembrance of the Power Plant from WCW?
Well, yes, because as you know, I tried out at the Power Plant, and when I walked in with that McDonald's McShake, they threw me right out. So, and rightly so. But yes, I do remember the Power Plant. They really did cover it a lot, and it was a hotbed of talent. Like if you got through there, you were going to get to the major leagues, and I think it was definitely more well known and well respected than the WWF's version, which was basically the TV show Tough Enough, right?
Well, they had OVW, which was Ohio
Valley Wrestling,
which was FCW.
But the Power Plant
OVW was run by Jim Cornette for a while.
But wasn't that a little after the Power Plant? I don't think it was concurrent. I think the Power Plant goes back a lot further, and the Power Plant had
Power Plant opened in '95. It closed in 2001. I don't know OVW's dates, but I mean the WWF did have some thoughts, I think, in early 2000s about setting up some kind of minor league filter system where they could train stars and move them up to the main roster.
Yeah, but I think to answer your question, the Power Plant came with a modicum of respect because it was sort of like the last breeding ground of the old territories. And
I agree.
I agree. So, and the people who ran it kind of old school. Unfortunately, I think the style of or the presentation of the product at the WCW level was very contradictory to what they were training for at the power plant. And that was because the business was changing. At least that's what I remember.
Well, in my notes, the power plant seemed like WCW really, and this kind of fits the era because it's the 90s or mid 90s. They wanted big, strong, tough guys. Mm-hmm. They didn't care as much about wrestling skills. They wanted guys with some height and some weight and some stamina rather than spot fest. And we know that that's changed, and maybe for the betterment. But
Goldberg didn't have much stamina, but he had everything else on that list.
Well, he shot up. He had five dark match appearances, and then on September 22nd, 1997, on the episode of Nitro, Goldberg defeated Hugh Morris in his debut match. We chatted briefly about it off air, but did you see Goldberg's debut match live? It was clear from the beginning he was not some kind of job or enhancement talent. He was a little bit leaner than he is now, but he was full of muscle, and he even implemented some minor MMA moves in his debut match. But thoughts on if you saw it live, but Goldberg versus Hugh Morris, the streak begins.
Yeah, I didn't see it live, and I'll tell you why, because at that time I wasn't watching WCW unless the NWO were on. Because I was going back and forth to Raw, so I did not see that match live. However, I have seen replays of it. They definitely did a good job in building up, like, who is this stranger coming out of nowhere, and defeating, a B-level talent, but not a jobber in Hugh Morris. And it was a good introduction. In looking at it now, it was a good introduction. And at the end of the match, do you remember at the end of the match when Mean Gene Okerlund tried to interview him and he just walked past?
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of cool too.
Goldberg looks to the camera and says 1-0, and then he walks out. He had a little shiner under his eye.
Yes, and wait before you continue. I just want to say.
Wait.
Okay, all right, I'll wait.
Go ahead.
If I had seen it live, I know what my response would have been. My response would definitely have been, "Here's their Stone Cold ripoff." That's what I would have said at the time.
Yeah, I saw it live, and that didn't come to my mind, but I definitely said to myself, whoa, I think I'm going to check this dude out next week to see what they do with them. It looked like something cool was brewing. Ironically enough, Hugh Morris is Bill DeMott. Mm-hmm. Bill DeMott was the first trainer for NXT, and if you remember a couple years ago, got fired because of very sort of regressive bullying. There was a lot of allegations. This started maybe 2013, whenever and he got canned and was replaced by Albert. I don't know his, Prince Albert. That Albert, I don't know what his real name is, but that's the head trainer now in NXT.
Yeah, well, it's just anytime you bring up like this bullying woke. I mean, it's wrestling, for God's sake. It's pro wrestling. They're the biggest sons of bitches in the world, and we're whining about how we're being treated. I mean, give me a break. And he was a talented guy.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
I don't know where he is now, but he was a talented guy, and it's just amazing. Who was crying? The guy who got bullied by JBL, whatever his name is. I have
no idea. That was the Miz, actually.
Really? My Miz?
Yeah, you have to go look up his promo from Raw. It's probably going back 9 years, where he talked about he got so much crap in that locker room, they made him change, like, in public bathrooms because of his reality show background.
Well, okay.
Now, hold on, let me finish. But the point of the promo was he took it and he stuck it out. But JBL was notorious, and I think he even references JBL, who was an announcer at the time for Raw. Like, you gave me a lot of shit, and I'm still here, and now I'm one of the top guys.
I got to check that out. I do not remember that, but I will check that out.
It almost positive on YouTube. So look, Goldberg, he starts to score some quick victories over his fellow WCW wrestlers. Matches ranged anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. Goldberg's succession of wins saw him quickly advance up the card in WCW, and he was pushed as a major singles wrestler. Captivated fans with his, monstrous yet silent charisma, brute strength, and agility. Goldberg makes his pay-per-view debut at Starrcade, defeating former Bear and ex-husband to Deborah McMichael. Puppies! Steve McMichael. I was just thinking about this, but any thoughts and memories on Mongo McMichael?
Yeah, he was hilariously bad.
All right, so while you're going over this, I'm going to run and urinate very quickly. So talk about Mongo McMichael. Give me 2 minutes. I gotta go.
Steve Mongo McMichael. He played for. I think he played for the Chicago Bears. Mongo was. You guys out there love this. I'm talking to nobody, but Mongo was hilariously bad, and that meant he was entertaining to watch. Whether he was commentating or as a member of the Four Horsemen, he would come out always with his old school Bears jacket. Just like his promos were absolutely just stunningly like generic. And so that made it fun to watch because it was a good laugh. Like some of the early, that mid 90s to late 90s WCW stuff was so. Like, it was fun to watch because it was a train wreck. And at that time, anything that didn't have to do with the NWO, because the NWO was so overpowering, anything that didn't have to do directly with the NWO was sort of brushed aside, with the exception of Goldberg. So, Evan's back. Just to sort of recap what I said, Mongo was hilariously bad, which made him fun to watch.
He was fun to watch. He was good as an announcer too.
I said that he was just like the typical, unseasoned, just like passionate, but has no. He had no skills in that area, but it was fun to listen to. But what I was saying as you came back, I said he suffered from. At the time, if it wasn't the NWO, it was brushed aside, and the exception to that was Goldberg. Do you agree with that?
Was Mongo part of the Four Horsemen at some point?
Yes, it was him, Benoit, who we're not allowed to talk about.
We can talk about
I know. It was him, Chris Benoit, Flair, and Arn Anderson at the time. And I
think if he was positioned as an announcer, he would have been fine. But he was not really good in the ring. He was a big guy, but he was a very he could have been maybe a mouthpiece as a manager or something like that.
You gotta love that old school Bears jacket he used to wear.
He was good. He was good. Probably wrestling ruined his marriage, but anyway,
it does for most of them. But how you let a marriage to those puppies? I mean, that woman. All right, whatever. I saw Andrew Dice Clay last night, so I'm in my misogynistic mindset.
Was he still very misogynistic?
Oh my God, he was hysterical. I was crying.
Good.
I was crying.
Good.
I was
glad to hear that. So look, Goldberg is moving on. He's winning. Nitro, he challenges Raven for the United States Heavyweight Championship. Raven had won the belt a couple of nights earlier at Spring Stampede.
What about me? What about Raven?
Despite interference from Raven's flock, Goldberg overpowers them all and defeats Raven to win his first professional wrestling championship. You just referenced Raven. What Raven's flock were in the 90s, alternative music. I thought it was a pretty cool gimmick.
So did I.
Any thoughts on Ravens and Ravens flock in WCW? We can talk about Raven another time about ECW, but Raven in WCW, Ravens flock. I thought it was actually kind of cool.
I did too. It was kind of like an early version of kind of the Brood, kind of the Wyatt family type stuff. And I liked Raven. He was my broadcast colleague, as you know, when I went to that first WWF fan festival. But I thought I really did like that angle. They just, like so many other good angles, they never really went anywhere with it. That it was overshadowed by the NWO. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think Raven was almost like, I think of superstar Billy Graham. He was like too cool for his time. I mean, I felt like he could have been such a major
ahead of his
star,
time. Yes,
he was so into psychology, and not to get off on a tangent, but that's the piece that I find missing so much in all of it. I from what I read, AEW is trying to put a little more psychology piece into it, but just like you said, going into WrestleMania, they've set matches, but they haven't set the psychology, and the psychology is where you get so interested, invested as a fan.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's like Kane will bump into Jericho and a cup of coffee will spill on somebody's shirt, and next thing you know, they're in a blood feud.
Texas death match over the Texas coffee match. A
Yeah,
Starbucks match. Oh my God! What are we going to do?
A spilled cup of coffee.
Yeah, Raven. WCW at the time, the type of production that they ran was not conducive to that kind of Jake the Snake type psychology. It just didn't.
What do you mean? Did you feel WCW Nitro wasn't well produced? Because I thought it was.
It was well produced. It was just differently produced. It was too polished and too like. It was too live. Man, it's like it really felt like you were there, and that meant that. Did you ever realize that when you go somewhere, like when you go to like a sporting event or something?
Go ahead.
It looks much bigger on TV than it does live.
I agree with that.
Do you agree with that? And that's what it looked like on TV. It looked smaller than the WWE. And
maybe could it have been? They didn't. I think that a lot of times they didn't go to. They wouldn't go to. They did hit major arenas, but sometimes
that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. I don't mean the smaller.
They went to smaller venues.
Yes, but it's not even that. It's the way it was filmed. It's like the camera angles, the type of cameras that they use. If you look at WWF and WCW at the time, the look of it is so different. Like whatever filters or camera filters they were using, it just didn't have the cinematic type feel that WWF had. That's the way I see it. And like it was much louder and I don't know. There was something missing. Raven, I think if Raven had that gimmick in WWF/WWE, it would have went over much better. That's what I think about that.
All right, let's move on. Goldberg, again, continues his rise. I mean, I could go over all of the specific matches, but beats Conan at the Great American Bash. At this point, he adopts the catchphrase, "Who's next?" in reference to his rapidly expanding winning streak. So now now Nitro is specifically referencing his winning streak. Goldberg is 74-0 as he has his first championship belt. So looking back on what we know now, was it the right call to have a newcomer start off with such a winning streak and with it such high expectations?
For them, yeah, absolutely.
Well, for Goldberg,
for WCW, it worked. They needed something to carry the rest of the program that wasn't built around the NWO, and Goldberg was it. He was on every week, and it was a very welcome, at least by WCW fans, it was a very welcome thing. Like, who's he going to crush this week? It was episodic television. So the answer is yes. But then you said knowing what we know now. Okay? knowing what we know now, I think it hurt him in the long run because now that's how he was trained. He was trained to have these 2 to 3 minute matches, and now when you ask him to go longer, he can't do it. He was never trained to do that.
I mean, let's talk about now.
Okay.
Those, not Goldberg, but WWE has tried to, Eric Rowan, all these guys, that Strowman. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to work. This whole, come out and obliterate a guy in 2 minutes, and then they don't lose for 6 months. It just feels like, I would think about Strowman. He just he's going into WrestleMania. That doesn't seem to really be a marquee match unless they bring Tyson Fury back, who's coming off a huge win over Deontay Wilder in the boxing world. They have a little prior rivalry, but I mean, is the day over where you could just prop up a 6'8" monster and have him squash guys on TV and get to the main event? Because it looks like now the fans want a more nuanced guy. The Rock, he lost a shit ton. Even Triple H, who has been criticized, they've all lost a shit ton. And it's ways to sort of develop the character and evolve. I don't know. Thoughts on maybe the whole deal with the squash monster and being a top guy?
Well, none of that works very well anymore because everything is immediate, and they can't take time to have a slow burn. It's got to be every Raw and every SmackDown has to be the moment, and it's almost like they're booking on the fly, like WCW did back in those late '90s when the NWO was flaming out. And I'm sure you've read in the dirt sheets over the last few days how they were a month away from WrestleMania and they just completely scrapped plans and revamped. So they are booking on the fly.
That could be that doesn't have. I don't see that necessarily as a criticism. I mean, things happen. Last year, Kofi Kingston got on a hot run, and you got to sort of look at the surrounding the times, the fan reactions. I think you want to build, but I mean, it looks like Lesnar and McIntyre was sort of in the books for a while, and they're building towards that. Whether it works or not is another issue. I think that the Goldberg thing, from what I've read, he came on TV. Look, the Saudi shows, those fans seem to want almost a nostalgia show. They want a couple of old timers there. And the WWE always gives them what they want. And maybe they looked at Goldberg and said, you know what? Good reaction. SmackDown ratings are up. Clearly the fans want to see him. Let's get him in the mix.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, though, because I wasn't happy that they had a title change at the Saudi shows. Because remember, I talked about the Saudi shows as kind of like not canon. Remember we had that discussion?
Well, you called them a glorified major house show, and I don't disagree with you. But in this case, I think if you're putting the belt on Goldberg, that's the best spot to do it. Because potentially, if you're in the States with these annoying fucking fans and social media, I don't know, you might have gotten a Roman Reigns type reaction or a Cena back in the day where he could have gotten booed out of the building.
That's a very good point.
Think about, Philly
right.
Royal Rumble, they booed Roman Reigns out the building. And it wasn't really his fault. He wrestled a fine, did a great job. But
that's because wrestling fans are a lot smarter than any of us give us credit for. They know.
I don't like it, Drew. I don't mind social media, and I don't mind the fans voicing their opinion. And we'll talk about shitting all over a match, and I want you. But I just don't. The chanting, everybody's got to be part of it. I want fans to cheer and to boo, but enough already. Fucking let these guys and gals go out there and tell their story without shitting all over it.
I'll agree with that, except you have to remember that wrestling, as much as we hate to admit it, is fictional television at this point. And just like fans of Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead or whoever, they criticize the choices that the writers make. And I think most of the anger over the title change was you've spent all this time building up Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, as this indestructible force, only to have him, chopped down in less than 2 minutes. And it's like, now what? So I'm sure, but that's got nothing to do with Goldberg actually, and everything to do with.
No, and I think it's legit. I think it's a legitimate criticism. I really do. It's just if you're asking me about Goldberg and the title change, I think Saudi was the best spot to do it.
I'll agree with that.
From what I read, there were some fans that weren't happy with it, but for the most part, you're going to get a very jovial crowd that's just happy to be allowed to go to a wrestling event, and enjoy the spectacle of it.
Yeah, and they allowed some women in the building at this last one.
Well, so you mentioned about rushing, and so I want you to listen because I'm going to talk about probably your first real debatable point in Goldberg's career, minus the 74 win streak. So let's talk about finally on Monday Nitro at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. And I want you to listen. With over 40,000 fans in attendance, Hulk Hogan goes up against Goldberg for the WCW title. Framing this match at the time, we're in the full-out Monday Night Wars. WWF had already begun to dig into WCW's rating dominance. This match, by many folks, it was seen as the last gasp of success for WCW. It is one of the highest-rated WCW matches on cable TV. There's been a lot of criticism here for Eric Bischoff and WCW that the Dream match was given away for free. That is free on live cable television. Possible short-sighted booking here. There was a tremendous live gate, close to over $1 million for WCW. But credit Bleacher Report, BleacherReport.com, WCW's best match that never was. Bill Goldberg versus Hulk Hogan carries many different meanings to the unabashed wrestling fan. It was a moment of history, chills dancing around your spine, standing room only crowd in the Georgia Dome made WCW Monday Nitro look like the Super Bowl. You have your hometown favorite and the heir apparent to WCW's throne standing across a man who's considered to be bigger than the sport of wrestling itself. So we have an outburst of cheers following Goldberg's hallmark victory. I'm skipping over some stuff, but to the cynical, more jaded viewer, this moment was foolishly mortgaged for short-term gain. WCW could have fostered the Hogan-Goldberg feud into a long-term build that might have popped a blockbuster-level buy rate. Arguably the biggest wrestling star of all time was once again atop of the food chain with the heavyweight championship in tow. Bill Goldberg served as WCW's only hope, riding an unprecedented, undefeated streak. This palatable dynamics rivaled that of Hogan-Andre, but the story was booked, narrated, and paid off quicker than a Goldberg match. This too good to be true booking commenced in Goldberg's backyard of Atlanta, GA. It did turn out to be a feel-good moment. The quarter hour drew an enormous 6.91 TV rating, meaning the match flirted with over 10 million viewers. Had even a fraction, the author argues, of these viewers paid to see match in a closed-circuit pay-per-view style, this match could have broken multiple WCW pay-per-view records. The TV ratings meant two things. WCW won the battle, beating Raw with a final number. Raw had a 4.85, but longtime pro wrestling columnist Mike Mooneyham estimated that the match could have made over $7 million if it was saved for pay-per-view. There was nowhere to go but down. So Groo, the magic may be slipping or slowly ebbing away. Thoughts Groo on the mega match on free television back in July of 1998. We're still pretty early in the evolution of WCW and WWE on cable television. They put it on free television. Goldberg topples Hollywood for the WCW championship. WCW's last gasp. Groo, thoughts? Goldberg versus Hogan.
Well, number one, it was a good match. Number two, I don't buy the free television argument because while it's free for us, okay, ratings equal revenue, and they probably made more than $7 million in advertising for that match. or for that show. And I know that Bischoff knew that. But
am I old school still thinking hold your? I know we're in a new era with television and they have great matches on TV all the time, but you got something like that. You don't feel that they missed the mark by somehow building that to a pay-per-view?
Not from a monetary point of view, from
whatever.
Wait. No, there's a difference. There's a difference. From a quality wrestling point of view, yes, but I think the reason why was because they weren't fully invested in a Goldberg Hogan thing. They were saving Hogan for Sting. Hogan versus Sting was their big build, wasn't it?
I'm not. Listen. I think. Well, I believe the Hogan Sting whatever pay-per-view was ultimately very disappointing. They had quite a build. I think they kept Sting off out of the ring for almost
a year
and a half.
Yeah, but that's what they were. That's what they were going with.
Here's my thing. I believe because I did see the match live.
I did too.
When I go back, I was a Raw guy, but when I saw Hogan versus Goldberg, I went over to Nitro. So I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Raw had begun to dig in its heels, and I believe Raw had was number one and had begun to now put some consecutive weeks together as the number one show. And I think, and I believe Bischoff has referenced this on his own podcast, and we'd have to find it, but I think it was more a defensive move. Let's put our hottest guys on television because we got to win this ratings war. So, and they did, and I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying, but I think there are some valid points that the author makes about you got your two top guys. This could have been really a momentous pay-per-view situation. It was great television, and I agree. It was a great match. 6-7 minutes, everybody got their offense in, and Goldberg really, topples Hogan, and it was a great moment. Place went nuts. But I think there's an argument or a debate there to say why not pay-per-view.
Yeah, but I think to quote the beautifully, wonderfully mediocre Tony Schiavone, that'll put some butts in the seats, which it did. They were more concerned about their ratings war with at least Bischoff was. They were more concerned, like you said, with their ratings war with WWE.
So you don't think that's short-sighted booking, kind of?
Of course, at WCW, that's all they did. It was the lone exception was the Sting build-up, but everything else was completely short-sighted.
We go to Tampa for WrestleMania weekend, and if we somehow get across with Eric Bischoff, we've taken pictures right next to Eric Bischoff. I'd love to, Eric. Could I ask you one question? I'd love to ask him in hindsight. Was the best move to put Hogan Goldberg on? That would be my one question.
I have a feeling he's answered that question on one of the Monday Night War documentaries. I feel like they talked about it,
or his podcast.
Yeah, but I would know where to look for it on the network. I'll look. I'll check it out because I know that they've discussed that.
Oh, well, that's your homework.
I walked right into that one.
I'll have
my students do it.
Goldberg moves on. He's the WCW champion. And then we get a really solid matchup. He gets into a feud with DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Goldberg and Page begin a feud with each other at Halloween Havoc. The feud was settled after Goldberg defeated Page to retain the title. According to Goldberg, his match against Page was one of his favorite of his career. And it should be, I don't know if you've seen that match, but it is clearly one of Goldberg's best matches. It lasts maybe about 12 to 15 minutes. Both guys look like $1 million. And I don't know if you've seen it, but the amazing sequence of DDP countering a jackhammer with a diamond cutter. It gets that tantalizing 1-2 count on Goldberg before the kick out. Look it up on the network, one of WCW's finest. Are you familiar with Halloween Havoc?
Oh,
Goldberg versus DDP.
Yep. And, DDP was, that's why he's a Hall of Famer, because he was able to make people look much better than they were. And that's what I saw in that match with DDP.
I feel like there's a backhanded little bit of, do you feel Goldberg can't, forget about him now.
He's not a wrestler. He's not a grappler. He's a brawler. And, when you put two brawlers in the ring, it never seemed like that's why his matches with Hogan were never that exciting, because they're just their styles. Like we've talked about
you just told me the match on Nitro was a great match. Hogan versus
Goldberg.
Good.
It was good. When I say good for those two, good for them.
All right, pick a point, stick with it. I think it was a great match because it was 6 minutes. It was a well-crafted. You didn't need to see them go 20 minutes. It was everyone got Hogan had the cheap heel offense.
Yes.
And then Goldberg sets up. He's the young guy with the power moves, and he topples the larger-than-life hero.
The story sold that match, and it was very effective. If they're telling a good story, you will sit there. Like, for example, I'll go way back just briefly. I'll go way back to Hogan Andre. Hogan Andre is not a good wrestling match, but but the story of it, you would sit there and watch Andre have Hogan in a bear hug for 3 or 4 minutes, and what today would get booed out of the building, people are still screaming because they want him to come back slowly because of the history and the psychology, and that's what worked for Hogan and Goldberg.
I'll give you the history, but we were also 15 years old, and we loved anything that the WWF put in front of us. I mean,
true, but even today that would work because of the build-up and the story, and that's why Hogan Goldberg worked. But when you're talking about DDP and Goldberg, that worked for a whole different reason, because that worked on a wrestling level, and because DDP is one of the best ever, and Goldberg is not and would never claim to be.
All right. Well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with your Hogan Andre point, but fine. Listen, Goldberg beats DDP, and now we're somewhere approaching the official count of 173-0. 174 days as champion when Goldberg loses the title to Kevin Nash after Scott Hall, disguised as ringside security, makes a run-in and shocks Goldberg with a taser gun. So, what is this, 99? I'm in full wrestling fandom here, Groo. I loved everything and criticized very little, but even I was disappointed with how they ended Goldberg's streak. A taser gun? A taser gun. I mean, come on. I was 29. I loved everything WWF and WCW threw at me. I criticized very little, and I was like, wow, this is a piece of horse crap. And really, in some ways, Goldberg never really recovered, at least in WCW. So, Groo, Goldberg's streak is over. Kevin Nash is your champion. A taser gun. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, look, they needed to end both the title reign and the streak, but they couldn't do it cleanly because that would hurt his character. So they had to find a way to just take it from him. And that's what they used, and it was what it was. What happens if he gets beat cleanly by Nash? It's a quandary, and that's the hole that WCW used to dig for itself all the time, because they don't have these long range plans, or they didn't, and so they would say, okay, the crowd's starting to do this or whatever, so we've got to take the title off him, but we don't want to destroy him. So, let's say we got a taser. Let's use it. Whatever, a schmaz, and to end everything that they have built up for all that time like that, as crappy as it was probably their only choice.
Yeah, I mean, you could have booked a clean loss, and then just like everything else, how does the guy deal with the first time? He goes back, he trains. I don't know. I'm sure.
I think that's.
I'm sure there could have been a storyline, through there. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I don't think there's.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. I think they could have done something like that, and it would have been great. Follow his return.
Remember, I'm 28. I love everything that these companies throw at me, and I'm like, what the fuck? That's how this guy's going to lose? With a taser
I agree.
Gun?
I thought the same thing. But, NWO was hot at the time, And but like I said, they what you just described as like, okay, now he goes back to the drawing board. They could really create a story about how Goldberg is going to recover. But see, that is a long-range plan, and WCW didn't do those things. WWE and WWF did, or at least they tried to, but they had no interest in that. They wanted everything to happen now, tonight. What are ratings going to be tonight? And how are we going to respond to that? And I think that's why they made those decisions. But we can ask Eric when we get to WrestleMania.
Yes. So Goldberg, he's done 173-0, and it was funny. I just found some funny, on my research. Some of the wrestlers kind of criticizing the whole streak. I have a quote from Chris Jericho. 1 week he'd be 42-0, and then 2 days later he'd be 58-0. Does stepping on bugs count? So,
That's funny.
So a lot of criticism there. And
is that what Jericho's doing right now? Is he opening at Uncle Funny's?
No, he's the AEW champion.
What's AEW? I don't want to.
Well, listen, you talked about this a little bit earlier, and you mentioned sort of Goldberg as a brawler, but there was a lot of criticism about the streak and a lot of criticism how a rookie starts off. So do you think most wrestlers circa the late 90s and 2000s respect Goldberg, or do you think they view him more as, maybe you even mentioned, a brawler, a home run hitter, a knockout artist, all power with a very limited skill set?
Fuck them. They have to respect him. You know why? Because the ultimate job of a professional wrestler is to get the crowd response, and he got it. So however you do it, that's worth respect. Don't you agree?
That's a great hot take right there. Let's get you on Mad Dog Sports.
Yeah, I mean that he did it. He did what so many. Just because somebody works their ass off for years and years and years, if you just don't have it, you don't have it. Okay? If Babe Ruth comes back from the dead and starts hitting home runs every time he goes up to the plate after having not attended a practice or a thing for 100 years, guess what? He's in the starting lineup, and whoever is the right fielder for that team is sitting, because that's who people are paying to see. And that's what Goldberg had and still has it, obviously. Okay, he comes out, he has this match. When was his last match before Super Showdown?
I think he beat Dolph Ziggler at SummerSlam a year ago.
Okay, so people have to be pissed off at that, wrestlers, but they should be pissed at themselves and ask themselves why they haven't been able to draw money, as they say in the business, like Goldberg. We could criticize Goldberg for his attitude or for his wrestling ability or lack thereof or whatever, but as Shivani says, he puts asses in the seats, and you have to have respect for that. That's the way I see it.
Shivani didn't say asses in the seats about Bill Goldberg.
He said it about Cactus Jack, but...
Okay. All right, so look, let's fast forward a few months.
Do you agree with what I said, though?
Oh my God, this podcast. Finish your thought, and then let's.
I just did. I asked you if you agree.
What's the question?
I forgot. No, about my assessment of how the wrestlers.
I believe most of the current wrestlers probably see Goldberg as, a power guy with limited skill set, and probably don't respect him as much as.
Well, they definitely see him. They definitely see him as the first two things you said, but you have to respect his ability to draw money. That's what the business is. It's a business. Is everybody Bret Hart all of a sudden? And it's like you have to pay your dues, and even if you're drawing millions of people, for the love of God, there's bleeping and baking and factory lights. I'm all right. I'm okay.
Let's talk about Bret the Hitman Hart. Let's fast forward a few months. The Hitman jumps ship from the WWF to their biggest rival, WCW. And, of course, the potential dream match of Goldberg versus Bret the Hitman Hart becomes a reality. Goldberg challenges Hart for the WCW World Championship. You may remember one of the more innovative spots on Nitro when Goldberg spears the Hitman, and the Hitman gets right up.
He's got the plate, right?
Thank you. You want to run this?
I'm asking.
Guys, it's nothing worthwhile with Groo. Go.
Like I said, like you said, it's not worthwhile.
I remember. Okay, well, he is wearing a Captain America type shield underneath his shirt, and Hitman gets up on it.
It was like an ice tray from a refrigerator. Did you see that thing?
He had like a shield. It was like a shield.
It was a tiny little.
All right. Well, anyway, I thought it was actually kind of cool.
It was a cool idea, but they could have come up with something better than what he wrestled in like a hockey jersey, right?
Well, it wasn't rest. They had a show off, and he was wearing like a Toronto Maple Leafs hockey jersey in Canada.
I just remember him taking that thing off and looking at it. It was like a piece of tin.
I love this guy just completely mocking my research.
No, the research is perfect. That's exactly what happened. I'm responding to.
You weren't a little surprised? I mean, I thought that was kind of a cool.
No, it was. It was cool, but it was sort of hurt by the fact that what he had on. It couldn't have been like a sheet because it went under his shirt. I remember it was kind of like it was taped to him, but it wasn't a real bulky thing. It was anyway. Fuck it. Who cares? It wouldn't have knocked out a fifth grader, all right? But
all right, let's get to more serious stuff. In the course of their match, Goldberg delivers a
stick. These Prada Willie kids. I mean, oh, sorry. I just went back to the.
All right, go take your Ritalin and let's get back and focus. Goldberg delivers a stiff kick to Bret the Hitman Hart's head, legitimately giving him a concussion and tearing a muscle in the back of his neck. Hart continues on, suffering for what he believes was at least one other concussion as he hit his head on the floor while executing one of those real cool ring post assisted figure 4 leg locks. The match ends when Roddy Piper, the special guest referee for the contest, declares Hart the winner, despite Goldberg never having submitted to the sharpshooter. Anyway, it goes on. They have some kind of rivalry, but Bret the Hitman Hart has since come out really legit. At first, and we have these shoot interviews. I love Bill, and he didn't mean it, but lately, I don't know if you've heard, he's been a little more critical of Goldberg, and Goldberg saying it was an accident. But the last shoot interview I heard of Goldberg said, look, if I really wanted to legitimately hurt Bret the Hitman Hart, I would have fucking really hurt him. It was purely an accident. Not sure there's much to discuss, but any thoughts on the whole controversy, Goldberg stiff-kicking Hart, and really that's the reason why he ends up retiring a bit early.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's exactly what you said. I think it's sour grapes on Bret Hart's point of view because it definitely was an accident. It should end there. And it's horrible what happened to Bret, but that happens. Okay, yeah. Are you going to say that D'Lo Brown meant to paralyze Draws? No, it was a horrible accident, and that shit happens. This is the business that you've chosen. So, but Bret Hart, he one day. I mean, look, we love the Hitman for better or worse, but one day he talks this way, and then the next day he talks the other way. Like, and it's hard. Like, I know he had a stroke after that, or a mini one, whatever, and it's horrible what happened. But there's no way that Goldberg meant to do that in any fashion whatsoever. I cannot believe that, and will never believe that.
The last sort of real big Goldberg incident before we wrap up WCW, don't know if you remember, but Goldberg injures himself on December 23rd, 1999 episode of Thunder, in a sequence in which he's chasing the NWO limousine. The spot calls for Goldberg to pound on the windshield and to break the windshield to ensure his safety. Goldberg was given a metal pipe, and there was sort of some gimmicking of the front windshield. And then, of course, Goldberg gets aggressive. He drops the pipe and puts his forearm through a side window. A shard of glass sliced an artery in his arm, and he began bleeding out profusely on live television. The show concludes with Goldberg pounding on the limousine hood with just blood spraying everywhere. As soon as the show was over, medical personnel rushed to assist injured Goldberg, and he goes to the hospital for emergency surgery. He loses copious amounts of blood due to the injury and was told that his injury nearly resulted in an amputation of his forearm. We've seen this during the course of his career, Goldberg getting so intense that he hurts himself. He last famously headbutted the locker room door, giving himself a concussion at the last Saudi Super Show versus The Undertaker, and went to the ring with his forehead openly bleeding. Part of the Goldberg mystique, any kind of thoughts on he slices his artery and blood spurting everywhere and sort of that aggressive not following precaution, or I don't know.
Yeah, he gets into it. He improvises as someone who has done the same thing to you with that reverse pedigree that I gave you that time. You know, I mean, you get out there. Goldberg was never a disciplined wrestler, so he's going to, and he's definitely an emotional guy. You see it every entrance, like he's pumping himself up, and that's why people, I guess, consider him somewhat dangerous to work with, because he will throw some curves just on a whim, and that you can't really do that.
If fans want to see our innovative double pedigree spot, go to the network under crap under crap from the cellar door. Click on that, and you'll see the link to the Moody Groo rivalry.
The Battle of Bunk 22.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, so Goldberg, WCW was sold to the WWF in March 2001. Goldberg is recuperating from shoulder surgery. The WWF decides not to buy out Goldberg's contract with Time Warner. As they had done with other WCW wrestlers, Goldberg's still getting paid out a significant amount of money by Time Warner, somewhere around the $2.5 million year sum. WCW run ends for Goldberg. We have the WWF invasion angle, and Goldberg remains home for it. So this kind of puts a closure to the WCW portion of Bill Goldberg's career, the only homegrown breakout star for WCW during the Monday Night Wars. We know that Goldberg eventually ends up in the WWF sans WWE, but at this point in 2001, and we've talked about this, I think, off air, but again, did the WWF miss the boat by not buying out Goldberg's contract and getting him in there for the invasion storyline? A storyline, might I add, that had so much potential, but ultimately historians feel kind of fizzled out. Thoughts on Goldberg sitting it out on the invasion storyline?
I think it was probably good that they didn't buy out his contract, because it was a very hefty one, number one. And number two, the way they brought him in later, not the way they used him, but the way they brought him in was effective. So I think absence in that respect made the heart grow a little bit fonder. And so I don't think it was a mistake, no.
Okay, you made some interesting points. I mean, my feeling is there's so much money there. You've got a chance to make history with a really cool storyline. I don't know, man. If it was me, hindsight's 20/20. Hogan, Flair, Goldberg. You got to get your top guys. This was, at this point, 2001. Social media wasn't really too crazy yet. These are dream matchups. These are dream scenarios. I mean, I think if I'm Vince, again, I don't disagree. I think he had a buyout of $3.5 million. That's a lot of money, even by today's standards. But you got a chance to do some really cool stuff. You know, there are times we've talked about the WWE has missed the boat. Hogan, Flair. And I think we've talked about the invasion storyline being another one. I mean, you don't think you have a chance to get a fresh Goldberg hot off of WCW into your ring? You don't do whatever you need to do to get him in there?
Again, you bring up, like, there's actually a lot of coverage on this on the new Ruthless Aggression thing on the network. No, I'm just saying there are answers to those questions, but my opinion is that if you look at all those guys, I mean, if you had to buy out Hogan, Nash, Hall, Goldberg, all these people, Flair, that's a shit ton of money right there. And at the time, remember, they weren't hemorrhaging money at that point. Okay, they were climbing back from their year-and-a-half long defeat at the hands of WCW. So, I think it was a money issue. Should they have done it? Should they have done it? Of course. You and I don't think about how to spend their money. So we would say, yeah, at all costs. Come on, Vince, you're a billionaire. You could afford a couple extra million here and there.
For this opportunity, I'm a financially conservative guy, but for this opportunity to make potentially history, I think you got to do it. Look, they were coming off of, WrestleMania 17, Astrodome, 72,000. I think at this point they're deciding to do major arenas in baseball and football stadiums for WrestleMania. I mean, I can't imagine the books were in the red. I mean, they just bought WCW. I know they got it on the dips, but clearly they're making a shit ton of money. I mean, no.
Yeah, but look, like I said, in my mind, in your mind, and in the fans' mind, yes, of course they should have done it. I understand why they didn't.
All right,
that's all.
So you brought up some good points about how they bring Goldberg in. So let's fast forward. Goldberg's out of WCW, and so what does he do to pass the time? Well, besides the occasional shoot interview bashing,
the business.
WCW, the business, Goldberg does do a stint in Japan, All Japan Pro Wrestling. He does pretty well there, has a couple of big matches versus Scott Steiner. So the WWF, now renamed World Wrestling Entertainment, begins contract negotiations. After leaving Japan, Goldberg signs a one-year contract with WWE in March 2003, debuting on the March 31st episode of Raw, the night after WrestleMania 19, and starts a feud with The Rock by performing a spear on him. And we have at Backlash, April 27th, following 3 spears and a jackhammer, Goldberg defeats The Rock. So the biggest free agent possibly ever debuts on Monday Night Raw, not at WrestleMania, not at a pay-per-view. You mentioned this earlier. You seem to like it. I think there's some debate points here, maybe debuting him on WrestleMania. Thoughts, Groo, on debuting Goldberg on Raw versus possibly debuting him at WrestleMania? And did you like The Rock as his first opponent? Major opponent.
The answer is yes to the first part and no to the second part. They should have built him up a little. Yeah, yes. I have, like you predicted, I have no problem with them doing, because pay-per-views and Raws and SmackDown, to me, the line is so thin these days. They were thinning out. They were thinning out then too. I never had a thought that they should have saved this for WrestleMania or anything. The TV show is used to sell the pay-per-view, or at least it used to be. So I have no problem with that. I do have a problem with them going right to the top with him as far as his opponent. They should have had him. They should have just sort of let him run over some of their high B-level talent. Let him just come out from the crowd every now and then and just destroy people. Because at the time, if I'm remembering correctly, Rock was a babyface. Correct?
Well, let me hear. You said a lot. I want you to take a breath.
I'm just asking.
Take a breath.
Well, wait. That will inform my answer.
Oh my God, this guy doesn't give me a second to respond.
Well, I can't breathe. You know that. If I stand up and walk around, I can't breathe.
I'm not joking. If you were a fan, you would know that The Rock was now in probably my favorite incarnation of The Rock. He was the Hollywood Rock, and he was sort of playing kind of an arrogant A-list celebrity in the WWE. So actually, my thoughts are flipped. I think you could have done something pretty cool at WrestleMania. Maybe not even a match, but imagine Goldberg just walking out cold or doing something. But listen, I agree that at this, Raw is still a pretty big deal. I think, I think you bring up some good points, but I think The Rock was a good choice because you got a veteran guy working with a veteran guy Goldberg's limited in the ring. Rock's, he's not Mil Mascaris, but he's still pretty darn good in the ring. And so
he's not Mil Mascaris.
But I think, when you look at the matches now, you see even more thought into styles. And so, when you're talking about, let's say, you want to bring back a Batista, Triple H is a good guy because they're both older guys, and Triple H, they could sort of work around each other. I mean, if they brought Batista back and worked him against Ricochet, probably not a good move. So I think here, even back in 2003, The Rock is a good choice because I think he can work around some of Goldberg's limitations. Now, to your point about a top guy and maybe you'll have him run through B talent, I think there's a point to be made there. But Goldberg at this point is a huge name. He's probably at this point the biggest free agent in WWE's history. You're gonna probably fast track him, if not to the top, to the upper third of the card. So I don't disagree. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think there's some legitimacy to that. But I don't really have a problem with them picking The Rock and having him go up against him at Backlash.
No, I'm good with that.
Okay,
I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. I originally got my Rock eras confused. The fact that he was kind of a heelish guy, and I'm good with it. Yeah.
And one of my favorite wrestling theme songs is the Hollywood Rock entrance theme. I still listen to it to this day at the gym every once in a while. I put it on. I mean, very innovative. The whole opener is slow and crescendo, and you're not even sure when they first played it. I don't remember where they did it, but I think they introduced it versus Hogan at their second bout. They had the one great match at Mania, and then they did a second bout that kind of set up Hogan versus Mr. McMahon at WrestleMania. Right. So anyway, look. He beats The Rock, and then he gets into a long sort of feud with Triple H and Evolution, and they hotshot the titles. And, the only thing I really would say would be, supposedly Goldberg and Triple H had real legitimate heat off camera, that they clearly did not like each other. And I think this goes back even to the Monday Night Wars, where they would, sort of say stuff on social media to kind of bash each other. But let's get to the real interesting piece. Let's fast forward to the Survivor Series where Goldberg meets for the first time on the air the WWE champion Brock Lesnar. Goldberg interrupts Lesnar after Lesnar remarks that he could beat anyone in the world. Feud escalates at the 2004 Royal Rumble. Goldberg is at the Rumble, dominating the Royal Rumble match. He had eliminated Charlie Haas, Billy Gunn, and Nunzio as the 30th entrant until Lesnar comes out and interferes with the match, executes an F5 on Goldberg, and then Kurt Angle eliminates Goldberg. So there sets up the rivalry between Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, and they do some back and forth on SmackDown and Raw. Paul Heyman gets involved. It sort of culminates where Goldberg comes out, distracts Lesnar versus his championship match against Eddie Guerrero on February 15th, and we know that Goldberg comes out of the crowd, costs Lesnar the title, Guerrero wins and becomes the new champ, and that sets up the match at WrestleMania 20 with Stone Cold Steve Austin serving as the special guest referee. And so here's some interesting points. It was well known on the wrestling dirt sheet websites that the fans knew that this would be the final WWE match for both Goldberg and Lesnar. And, of course, we have the largely negative reaction during the match. Goldberg wins the match, causing Lesnar to show Austin the middle finger, and both guys get a Stone Cold Stunner in return. Lots to digest here, Groo. Stunning reaction by the crowd. The rumors were out in the open that both Goldberg and Lesnar were on the way out. Lesnar was going to try out as an offensive lineman for his hometown Minnesota Vikings, and Goldberg, well, he's just done with the wrestling business, period. Websites were full ablaze with the rumors. I think really this is the first example in the sort of modern era where the dirt sheets really sway the crowd to shit all over a match. What should have been a dream match completely falls apart, does not meet the high expectation. Goldberg gets the win as he was probably seen as the lesser of two lesser of two evils. Stone Cold Stone's bolted him on the way out. Madison Square Garden shits all over the match. Thoughts on the first time Brock and Goldberg hook up?
It's too bad because if the match were good, that might have been something. But yeah, the crowd was against them both, and when there's not much to say. It's all right there. We played it at the beginning, and if you go and put it in your Google machine or see that match, you will see.
That's
I'm not
so
talking.
Cheap. So cheap.
I got to throw Conrad a bone.
So cheap.
But yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about it. I mean, that's exactly what happened. It was.
What do you think of my point? What do you think of my point that this was the first time really the wrestling websites really influenced a major match? Because I was thinking about that. I'm like, I can't remember a match where the crowd. I mean, they just shit all over this match.
It's the first time I remember being influenced by that. Me personally, because we knew we for all we know we might have been watching it together, but we knew that both of these guys were leaving and not on good terms, and the crowd resented that, and that's a very infamous point in WWE history and the careers of Lesnar and Goldberg. And lesser talents, and by the word talent, I mean the whole package, lesser talents might not have ever recovered from something like that. But kudos to both of those guys. They have.
But, yeah, it was just, and then Stone Cold stuns both. I mean, just
I'm surprised they agreed to do that.
It's just a complete crap job. Well, listen, they're getting paid and they're professional. They went out there and
True.
I think they did the best that they could given the circumstances. That WrestleMania 20, that might be a future podcast. That's a real unique WrestleMania, really sort of weird time in WWE history. A lot of unique matches. John Cena, they begin the. Oh, what am I boring you?
No,
do you want to blank?
No, it's. Do
you want to blank? The guy's in full blown yawn, a mouth the size of Commercial Boulevard. Just,
this is our first. This is our first morning podcast.
All right. Well, listen. The next 12 years, Goldberg is not to be seen except for a few sporadic wrestling appearances at some big indie shows. He does a few shoot interviews, mostly tearing down the WWE, specifically Vince McMahon and Triple H. Then in 2016, Andrew, it all magically changes. On May 31st, 2016, Goldberg was announced as the main character for the pre-order bonus for the upcoming WWE 2K17 video game. So already as a fan, we're kind of happy, and usually when they bring somebody back for the video game, maybe there's an appearance coming up. So throughout the summer, Goldberg and WWE do some media appearances, and Goldberg, openly kind of taunts former rival Brock Lesnar, trading insults with each other through social media and at these WWE 2K events. Goldberg would also appear at the WWE 2K SummerSlam event, fueling speculation he would be appearing at the event to later confront Lesnar. And then we have it. Goldberg appears on the October 3rd episode of SportsCenter, hosted by Jonathan Coachman, where he contemplates openly a return to the WWE. And if you remember, Jonathan Coachman, former WWE announcer and Raw personality, at that point had built him up to be a big presence on ESPN and internally had begun to push for more WWE coverage via ESPN. So we've never discussed the man. I enjoyed his time with the WWE. First, thoughts on the coach, Jonathan Coachman.
He's weird. Like he's good, but I don't get what he is going for. Sometimes is he a professional sports guy? Is he a wrestling guy? Is he a heel? Is he I can't pin him down. But he's always entertaining and he's good at what he does. But you can't really put him into any kind of category. Which I guess maybe if that's what he's going for, he's succeeding. So I like him. He's very entertaining.
Yeah, everything you said was spot on.
Very entertaining.
Very entertaining. So at this point, we have Goldberg. He's making WWE-related appearances. No confirmation. You excited that he's at least appearing in some form or fashion with WWE and the possibility of having him return?
Yes, because that's something that there was unfinished business there. And
well, let's talk about unfinished business. This led to Paul Heyman challenging Goldberg to face Lesnar on the October 10th episode of Raw, where Heyman states that Goldberg is the only blemish on Brock's WWE career, as Goldberg had defeated Lesnar at WrestleMania 20. So why now? Why return back to the WWE? Well, let's credit the Inquisitor.com. Goldberg reveals the one person responsible for his return in 2016.
My son.
Well, no.
No?
Can we be professional for a second?
If we were professional, we'd be on Sirius.
No, I want to be professional. I'll point to you when I need a comment. He goes on to say that Paul Heyman was really the big push for his return, and that he trusted Paul Heyman creatively, and that Paul Heyman really booked the whole process and envisioned Goldberg's return, and that Heyman, Lesnar, and Goldberg were all really lockstep on this whole notion of Goldberg returning. So before you shit on my research or my comments, are you surprised at any level that Goldberg credits Paul Heyman for his return in 2016?
No, because they're both Jewish, and
I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Not at all, because I mean, if there's one person who I've never heard anybody say a negative thing about as far as promotion and ideas and all this, it's Paul Heyman. And it doesn't surprise me at all that this would be Heyman's brainchild and that Goldberg would give him credit for it. Why not? Goldberg, that actually, you bring up a good point. That's one of the things that I always liked about Goldberg, is that Goldberg the wrestler and Goldberg the person are the same. They're honest. They don't lie. They don't they don't over embellish. They tell it like it is, and that's one of the things I've always respected about Goldberg. That he'll say what he wants, and he'll say it's like Lesnar too. Like they're both. There's no difference between the in-ring performer and the out-of-ring person. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all, and I'm glad that it happened that way.
All right, so they have some, appearances on Raw, and they're facing off, blah 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 blah. And we got the match at Survivor Series. We're not saving it for WrestleMania. We're going to go to Survivor Series 2016, and always a wonderfully a great debatable point. Goldberg defeats Brock. At this point, Brock is just a monster, and so Goldberg defeats Lesnar in under 2 minutes. Actually, in my opinion, quite a brilliant 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see it? I got a lot of thoughts on it as well. Survivor Series, the return Lesnar Goldberg tilt. Goldberg squashes the Beast in under 2 minutes. Thoughts, Gruthius?
What year was this?
2016.
When did you move to Arizona?
Oh, I don't know. 2015, maybe.
That long ago? Because I feel like we watched this together, and I feel like we were simpatico on it. We were like, yes, that we were telling each other that the fans are going to be pissed off. They're going to be like, oh, all this time, and then it's a 2 minute thing. But that's exactly what it had to be. Brock is always great at doing business, and he knew that there was more money to be drawn from this feud, so he was willing to lay down in a squash. I remember us talking about this at length, and I thought it was great. It was very exciting, and it helped draw out the angle and draw more money. Right?
Everything you said is spot on. I just remember being so surprised, though, at the brutality. I mean, Goldberg just manhandles him from the start. I mean, yeah. Brock gets a quick offensive move, and it's all Goldberg. And the crowd reaction was they were stunned. Then they loved it, and
Heyman sold the hell out of it too.
I mean, the look of his face when he pushes Goldberg into the corner, and Goldberg just stands up and pushes him down to the ground, and he looks up. That's really great psychology, even for a 2-minute match.
Yep. When it works, it works. And that's why that the match, when you try to take Goldberg and Lesnar and have a drawn-out main event style match for 12 to 15 minutes, it's not going to work. Goldberg's strength is the quickies.
Well, Goldberg comes on.
And speaking of quickies, Evan,
Goldberg comes on to Raw. He celebrates his victory. We go to the Royal Rumble. Actually, this was probably 2017 Royal Rumble. I apologize. But then not much to be said. Goldberg does eliminate Brock to further position the rivalry. And, of course, we have, for the first time, an Undertaker-Goldberg stare-off in the middle of the ring. And the Undertaker eliminates Goldberg. We move to, I believe, a fast lane where Goldberg squashes Kevin Owens, who's the Universal Champ. So now we have the belt on Goldberg. Not much to be said there, but any thoughts on Goldberg squashing a youngster like Kevin Owens for the title going into Mania?
They didn't have to do that, but to get the belt on, you got to get the belt on him somehow. So Owens is a guy who they knew would be able to recover. So if you're going to do it, you're going to do it with a guy like that. And I don't have a problem with it. No, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with it.
All right, let's
you
move
have to
on.
get the belt on him. How else are you going to do it?
Okay, let's move on. At WrestleMania 33. At WrestleMania 33.
I love that
Goldberg, bandana
you're sporting today, by the way.
I just worked out, and it's a new look. I'm edgy. You know, it's kind of like Nirvana, Pearl Jam. Love the new Pearl Jam single, by the way, "Dance of the Clairvoyants."
Oh, I'm still on the new Huey Lewis album.
WrestleMania 33, Goldberg loses the title to Lesnar, which was his first clean pinfall loss of his entire career.
We were there.
We were there live. Probably 6 to 8 minutes. It's quick. It's violent. Really well crafted stuff.
We liked it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's much to say about it, but I thought it was a brilliant conclusion to the whole Lesnar Goldberg run. Any thoughts about the Mania main event?
You just said it. I think we liked it live. Then I replayed it on the network, and it's just as good. It was very well done. These two work well together.
Yeah, they sure do.
Yeah.
Let's move on. January 15th, 2018, ESPN announces that Goldberg will be the headliner for the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2018. It's confirmed on Raw, and on March 25th, it is announced that Paul Heyman will be inducting Goldberg into the Hall of Fame. In 2019, Goldberg will make several one-off appearances for the WWE. First of which, some controversy, is defeated by The Undertaker at Saudi Showdown in Saudi Arabia. We did discuss a little bit earlier. Goldberg suffers a concussion prior to the match because he decides to headbutt himself to pump himself up, and then he gets a concussion again a few minutes into the match. He misses a spear and hits his shoulder and his head in the corner. The difference a year makes. A year ago, he's the Universal Champion. Now he busts his head open in Saudi and loses to The Undertaker in a match that is universally derided as a real stinker. Even The Undertaker looks visibly upset at the conclusion of the match. A dream match that was probably at least 10 years too late, Groo. It's not all Goldberg's fault. It's a real stinker. Saudi Showdown, Undertaker versus Goldberg.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything you said, but I think it's because of what he did to himself beforehand. He didn't walk into the ring ready to wrestle and or ready to go, and it showed. That's the whole thing right there. I mean, who knows how much better it would have been if he was 100%. But I mean, when you smash your head and then you get a concussion immediately, and then that's probably why he botched that spear, and the match was over before it started. So there's nothing really more to say. you know, and I did hear that they got into an altercation after the match.
I think verbal. I don't think they fought. I think they got into a shouting match backstage. Yeah, I remember feeling really bad for Goldberg.
Me too.
I wanted the showdown, the Saudi show. Look, these guys well past their prime. They're both in their, they're both
50s.
In their 50s. I mean, not even their 40s. And it's not 50, it's 53. These guys are older, and I wanted something. I knew it wasn't going to be a match of the century, but I wanted something positive, 3 minutes, something, interesting, and it just failed, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because I really wanted both guys to do well. It failed on really every level.
As we always do, yeah.
Yeah. It started off okay, if I remember, then he misses that spear, and it just tumbled. He couldn't remember the jackhammer. He couldn't even get.
He couldn't do it. But again, that's the whole thing. He was hurt before the match, and that killed it.
Well, both Taker and Goldberg go on to quick redemption matches. Goldberg's next match was at SummerSlam, in which he quickly defeats Dolph Ziggler. So let's fast forward to February 7th, 2020, on an episode of SmackDown. Goldberg makes that appearance via satellite and challenges The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, to the match for the Universal Championship. Wyatt accepted. We've discussed at the Super Showdown on February 27th, Goldberg defeats The Fiend to win the Universal Championship for the second time, thus becoming the first wrestler to win a world title after being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Interesting notation. Was Goldberg the right guy to get that spot on his record?
No, but it's okay. It's not a huge deal. Isn't he also like the first guy in his 50s too? Something like that?
To be champ in his 50s?
Yeah. I think he's the oldest to be champ, with the exception of Vince McMahon, which sounds weird anyway. But I think that's what it is. He's the oldest person to hold a WWE championship, with the exception of Vince McMahon. I think that's the case.
There you have it, Groo. Goldberg, in all of his glory, he'll be at WrestleMania 36.
And so will we.
He's going to be in, again, another main event. So my last question before we wrap up, Mr. Goldberg, 53 years old, does he deserve to be at the main event of your show of shows?
Yes, he's a main eventer. It's the same thing as asking if Hulk Hogan deserves to be in the main event. If he were to wrestle again, and he doesn't
deserve to be. He doesn't deserve to be in the main event.
I do. I think so.
60-something years old. When is the expiration date on for your here? I love the guy, but you really want to see Hulk Hogan get into the ring and embarrass himself? Or, at this point, let him do appearances. I have no problem. And if he wants to do a manager and get a bump, I'm okay with that. But do you really want to see Hulk Hogan in the ring at 60? I think he's well into his 60s now. Really?
Only to say that we were there to see Hulk Hogan's last match. That would be the only for novelty's sake. Yeah, yes. Okay. The answer is yes for novelty's sake. But Goldberg. Did they even announce that it is the main event, or are they going to go with a women's main event?
How could they not? It's got to be. I'm sure they're going to run.
There's another title with equal weight.
Listen to me. Forget everything you've heard or seen. Are you telling me that Goldberg and Roman Reigns is not going to be on the marquee with maybe another match or two? But you already saw that cool visual with ripped Goldberg with a Roman Reigns. They already showed that on SmackDown, so they already got the visual ready to go. You don't think that that's going to be one of 2 or 3 or 4 main events?
Yeah, it will be. It will be.
Okay.
It will be. I'm not. I would argue that you're putting us again, not even a part-timer in the main event, but.
You just
yes, you're right. You're right. I'm going back and forth. I'm thinking about it, and yeah, it's the draw, especially with Roman Reigns. They're obviously trying to build him back up which is finally the right way to do it. I expect Roman to take the title from him at Mania. Yes. I'd be curious, and we'll be there to see it ourselves. I'll be curious to see the reaction to that. My hope is...
Don't delve too much into that because we'll have our WrestleMania preview. I mean, they certainly have announced, I think we've got at least 4 or 5 matches now officially in the books. And I want to hold off there because we'll definitely talk about it further. But, Groo, to wrap it up, interesting man, still making headlines and polarizing fans all these years later. Who's next? That's a wrap on one Bill Goldberg.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Le'olam Va'ed. Amen.
Stay on the lookout for our next show. Groo, wipe the drool. It's been 25 years since the boss, Bruce Springsteen, went solo. Lucky Town and Human Touch. We will take a look at the most interesting time in the boss's career. What exactly happened?
Lucky Town.
Can you let me finish, please?
I got the song.
Is it all about you? Really?
Of course it is.
What exactly happened to E Street? His solo run as an artist. Where the albums a critical and commercial success? Bruce goes on the road live with his new band, Sans E Street, and the factors that led to the huge, and I mean huge, reunion tour with the E Street Band in '99. It's the boss solo, Lucky Town and Human Touch. So, Groo, any thoughts? We know he's one of our guys, the boss. I think a real interesting time to talk about solo, Human Touch, and Lucky Town.
Loving you's a man's job, baby. But yeah, this is actually the most fascinating time of his career to me, and it's the one that, like, literally when I bought Bruce's autobiography, I flipped right to that part, and I was a little disappointed that he didn't really talk about it much. Like, interesting. Like that's the stuff I want to hear the most. I want to hear in detail, what he was really thinking. Even like when Howard Stern interviewed Sting about it, like he's like, "You broke up the E Street Band." You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm fat. Even though
But I think Sting denied that though.
No, he did. I'm just saying that I'm fascinated by that whole era, and I can't wait to talk about it. I'm really looking forward to it because I'm really interested actually to hear what you dig up about it that I don't know.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot to contribute, but I think that's a real interesting time. And speaking of Human Touch, please get your hands out of your pants.
Well, you're asking me impossible. But
all right, well, listen, that's a wrap on Goldberg. Next week, the boss solo, Human Touch and Lucky Town. Groo, you want to take us out of here?
Yes. Well, I hear her. She's singing. Jane is on right now, so I cannot wait for next week's podcast. Sorry we missed everybody this past week, but life got in the way. But I see no reason why we should not be able to do our Springsteen podcast on Saturday, as per usual.
Yeah, I'm moving, and so it's moving a lot of stuff. I got to bring bags over to the new Casa de la Moody. I have the Gruthius room already prepped, ready to go.
Nice.
So,
is it insulated so the snores don't get out of the...
Yes, it's. Yeah. I may have to get it noise-proofed, but but look, it's an exciting time. I'm moving, and then I got WrestleMania with my boy.
We're just a month away.
It's a pleasure waking up every day. I'm getting real excited.
Really?
A real fun time. Yeah.
Because I wake up every day wondering why God didn't take me during the night.
Wondering if this is today's last breath.
Yeah. So I guess I have a ways to go.
Well, listen, I'm terribly excited.
What else we got coming up though? We got Bruce next week. And is there something beyond that, or are we waiting to wait?
The only thing I thought of, but it's going to be in March. I'm very much a fan of A Quiet Place, and I want to see A Quiet Place 2, and I wanted to see if we could do a movie review. That was the only thing I really thought of on the docket. I mean, I'm sure we could email and text and get some more topics ahead. I mean, obviously, we're going to do a WrestleMania preview. That's one show booked for sure. We got the Boss Solo. Other than that, I'd
like to hear from our audience. We have a bunch of downloads, so we'd like to hear what you guys would like to hear. You can email us at andygrew@gmail.com or just send us threatening text messages.
Or you can email me at moodyad1@aol.com. I have an AOL.
I'd like to use some of your. How about if we use some of your brother's old email addresses? Remember those? Remember those?
Yeah, I don't even know. Maybe we'll do a top 10 or even a top 5. I was thinking of maybe a top 5 sports movie, but I want to do top 5.
Yes, I like that one.
I like to dig into the movies a little bit more, but we'll come up with some topics. But
and I might want to do a Cobra Kai one as the. But maybe I'll do the research on that one.
Okay, no, then
but
that sounds good.
Lots of stuff coming up. Very exciting time to be us.
Yes, we're better, who's better than us? As you
absolutely
like to say.
Nobody.
All right.
So we will. Yes, I will take us home. We will see you next week, and until then, 3, 2, 1. Rip 'em.
Rip 'em. Whack whack.